Thanks for joining us today in Brevard. I'm Matt Reed, and we have a special program for you, my interview earlier today with Congresswoman Suzanne Kosmas, the Democrat from New Smyrna Beach. Kosmas represents House District 24, which includes northern Brevard County and Kennedy Space Center. We talked space, politics, government spending, and bank bailouts during a break from a seminar at the Florida Institute of Technology in Melbourne. Thanks for joining us, Suzanne. What are you doing at Florida Tech today, and what are you accomplishing there?
My pleasure, Matt. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. We're visiting with the folks here who are having a seminar put on by Brevard Workforce. As you know, obviously, in today's economy, jobs is a very, very important issue, and so we were invited to come here and discuss with small businesses and others in the community the effects that they are now seeing of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And so that was the headline of the event, and I was very proud to be able to come here and suggest the things that legislation has done specifically for Brevard.
What are some of those things? We're talking about what's referred to in shorthand as the stimulus bill. What are some of the things the bill has done here in Brevard County? Well,
one of the big important things we did early on was to ensure that Brevard County had the money it needed to keep its schools open and keep its teachers hired, because as you know, we were facing shortages of funding in the education stream that would have caused teachers to lose their jobs or perhaps even to have closed schools for one day a week or some other alternative solution. So the federal government under this bill has brought $13.7 billion into the state of Florida. Specifically for Brevard, we have $27 million that was offered in the first offering, so to speak, that came directly to Brevard in order that they could maintain their workforce. The second was, as you probably have heard us discuss, the $2.7 billion additional money that was to come to the state specifically for education, that Florida had to apply for a waiver in order to get that additional money. So it's been a very important issue for me that we ensured that Florida got the waiver necessary to get that money, and that provided an additional $24 billion for Brevard County. So from an education perspective, it was very important. There are a number of other things, as you know, regarding workforce development per se. There was a bunch of money offered. There's also money in the bill for small businesses. There's money in the bill for energy weatherization programs, a great deal of money for transportation issues, including right here in Brevard, the intersection at 95 in Palm Bay. And we are very excited about the opportunity that these kinds of infrastructure developments are going to be good for Brevard workforce.
What would have happened if that Recovery Act had not passed? We've had a number of Tea Parties here and a lot of conservative folks who say the stimulus should not have passed at all. They're against us taking the stimulus money here in Florida. What do you think the alternative would have been?
Well, I think if you look at it from a realistic perspective, Florida is one of the highest states in the country in both unemployment and in mortgage foreclosures. We felt that it was very important at this critical time when the whole nation was involved in an economic crisis, that the federal government step in and do some things to try to help people in their everyday lives. Working people, through no fault of their own, found themselves in difficult situations, and job reductions and the slowdown of the construction industry and the home building industry put everyone in a very awkward situation. So we felt it was very important to invest in our communities, and so we invested in the form of tax credits and tax incentives that would go to 95% of working families. In addition to, I'm proud to say, I sponsored a bill that would provide an additional $250 check to disabled veterans and to senior citizens. So an attempt to put some money back into the system through tax incentives, but also these direct investments in infrastructure, in alternative energies, in education, and in healthcare, $19 billion in healthcare IT, in order that we can get a more efficient and better outcomes in our healthcare system. So this was specifically directed to boost the economy in the short term, but also to build a long-term infrastructure on those things that we think are important parts of America's wonderful democracy.
It was a whopper of a bill. And with that in mind, I'd like your reaction to a quote that I took from your own campaign website. This was interesting. You said, back before you started your first term, quote, As a small business owner for almost 30 years, I am very aware of the need to pay as you go and to provide a balanced budget. In Congress, I will work to rein in wasteful spending and ensure accountability so we can get back to a balanced budget. How do you square that outlook with the spending in the Recovery Act?
Well, again, we believe these are investments in American innovation and America's desire to become energy independent. So we recognize that the budget as proposed is going to take some years to get back to the point where we have the kind of surplus that we had when the last administration came in place, and we are dealing with the deficit walking in the door. But at the same time, we also are dealing with an economic crisis that required immediate action. These investments will pay off. People will be employed. We will be in a situation where within 5 years we will no longer have a deficit. So I'm comfortable, even though there is spending happening, that it was necessary to stabilize the financial institutions. It's also necessary that we move forward on some important agendas, including healthcare, alternative energy, and education, in order to bring us to a healthy economy.
Suzanne, your district includes Kennedy Space Center, and that's one of your signature roles in Congress, representing KSC and NASA. What are you working on now, and what are the biggest challenges?
Well, as you know, the biggest challenge is the gap between the end of the shuttle program and the beginning of the new program, whatever that turns out to be. It's, probably Constellation, but I don't know that for sure. So what we're trying to do, and what we've been trying to do, is ensure that NASA had the funding for manned space flight to, first of all, complete the manifest for the remaining 8 shuttle launches that are due to go off, that we removed the hard deadline of September 2010 so that for safety reasons and all the weather reasons and the things that those of us around here know cause delays in launches, we were not stuck trying to cram in 8 launches in a time period that may or may not work for us. So we removed the hard deadline. We got an additional $1 billion in the stimulus funds, $400 million of which is directed directly to manned space program. And then we are looking for ways in which we can ensure that NASA is properly funded so that we can move forward on the vision that we have for the next phase of manned space exploration. Now, as you know, the President has appointed a panel led by Norm Augustine, known as the Augustine Panel, of 9 individuals who are, over the next 60 days or so, looking at reviewing NASA's manned space flight program, reviewing NASA's manned space flight program, and trying to ensure that we're headed in the right direction, that we have a clear vision, and that we have the sufficient budget to do exactly that. And I'm very eager, as are many people, to see what the outcomes of the review panel are. But at the same time, I have the assurances of Mr. Augustine and others at NASA that when that review is completed, we will have a complete review of the budget as well, so that whatever the vision is properly funded.
How receptive are other members of Congress to listening to you and the needs of this area on space? There are so many other issues going on.
I think they're very interested in continuing to see what is America's signature ability to be innovative and creative and to focus on science and technology for the future. And so everyone recognizes that we are in a unique position and that spaceflight, manned spaceflight, is a very important part of America's history, our culture, and our supremacy throughout the world that we want to maintain. And we are, being challenged by other countries, including China and India, with their space programs. We are in an awkward situation where we've got $100 billion invested in the space station, and we are going to be reliant on the Russians to deliver our astronauts to the space station for a period of time during the gap. So everyone understands that this is not, this is a very important scientific endeavor that we've undertaken, and that it's important that we maintain, both for national security reasons as well as all the science and technology innovation that comes from the space program. And NASA has job opportunities in almost every state in the union, so they are listening.
You were part of a majority that just recently passed the Cap and Trade Bill, one of the biggest environmental initiatives undertaken by Congress in perhaps decades. Can you explain your vote on that? Well,
I think this is a very, very important vote. You know, when I decided that I was going to run for Congress, one of the main issues that
you voted yes, correct?
I did.
Okay.
And one of the main issues that was very obvious to all of America last summer when gas prices went up over $4 a gallon, that we could not maintain our reliance on foreign oil to power this country into this next century. And so part of the commitment was to ensure that we made the investment in the future for all the right reasons, what I call a win-win, that we can improve the economy by creating a whole range of new jobs relative to alternative energy. I think that this is an important time for us to be making that investment in the economy, that we can improve the environment and assure that we have a clean, habitable earth for generations to come, and that we can improve our opportunity with regard to the decisions made in national security by not being reliant on foreign oil as our energy source in this country. It's a long-term perspective, but it's one that should have been taken many years ago, and now we've made the first step. It's not a perfect bill, but it's a very good bill. For Floridians especially, it's an excellent bill.
Who are some of the key interests lobbying that issue, and what do they want?
Well, as you probably know, there's a major organization called CAP, which is comprised of both business organizations, utilities providers, League of Conservation Voters and Sierra Club, and labor unions. That went across the board of those people who were interested in ensuring that this legislation moved forward, recognizing all of the potential, as I said, for the economy, the environment, and national security. This was an interesting array of strange bedfellows who came together and said, this is something we must begin and we need to do it now.
Suzanne, I'd like to give you a chance to respond to some of the criticism of the bill and of you for voting on it. I get a daily statement from the National Republican Congressional Committee. This is from Ken Spain, a spokesman for that group. He said, quote, Suzanne Kosmas's vote to kill jobs in her district and hand her constituents higher costs during these difficult times is nothing short of insulting. The people of Florida sent Suzanne Kosmas to Washington to represent their values and to restore prosperity. And she has returned the favor by once again bowing to her party bosses at the expense of middle-class families. Your reaction to that?
You know, politics is politics, and people will say whatever they need to say, but I'm all about representing the people in this district, and I thoroughly believe that this was an excellent bill, as I said, investing in jobs and alternative energies. I think you're going to find in the coming months that this is a big deal for Brevard County in particular, that we have a lot of things bubbling up there that are going to bring jobs to this area specific to this new energy bill. This suggestion that it's going to cost them more is overblown, and we figure that the average citizen is going to have a very minimal impact on their bill and on their energy bill at home, and that these for low-income people are covered by other alternatives. This is a step towards the future. If you want to maintain status quo, that's a different subject altogether. But if you want to move to the future and ensure that future generations have a clean area, a clean world, and if you want to ensure that Florida maintains its job base, it's got wonderful opportunities for solar and wind. It's got wonderful opportunities for other biofuels, and we are going to take advantage of all those things. And at the end of the day, we will have proven that we did the right thing.
You are also on the House Financial Services Committee with Barney Frank, who is the chairman there. And I know you've been involved with hearings on the TARP. I don't even know what TARP stands for anymore. The bank bailout, we'll call it. One of the things your committee was calling for was more accountability and transparency. Where does that stand?
Well, I voted against the TARP money. As you know, the second $350 billion was voted on after I came to Congress. I voted against it for simply the reason that you described, that there was not enough accountability and not enough transparency for the public to see where did the money go and did this money actually do what was intended to do, which was to make credit available to small businesses, to individuals, and to large corporations. And so far, I think that hasn't quite happened, in all candor. We are working on a major piece of legislation in that committee that will have to do with restructuring how those things that were formerly not regulated, restructuring how they will be viewed so that we can avoid a future crisis. In the meantime, we are trying to find ways that, and Geithner, the Secretary of Treasury, is using part of that money to attract private investment back into the system and to ensure that it is used in a way that is visible. It's all on the website. You can see exactly where the dollars went and what each bank has done with them. So accountability and transparency are better, but I felt at the time that the bill was passed that there wasn't sufficient accountability to taxpayers for where their dollars were going. Now the good news is that much of the money that was first loaned out in the first half of that is now being returned to the government by banks that are have not only paid us interest but are returning the money. So we did end up with what I think is a winning situation.
Suzanne, one of the things Congress did was approve money for people going through foreclosure. And you targeted people who might lose their primary residences. But here in Florida, and you know this because you're a realtor in your business life, there are so many properties that were investor owned. What is your take on that problem? Is that something Congress should not get involved with, or is there another step to be taken?
Well, there are a couple of things happening there. As you said, we passed some legislation which we thought was very encouraging for people who were in their primary residences to renegotiate their mortgages to ensure that they would not go into foreclosure. This is a very important step with regard to the economy as a whole, because obviously if any home in a neighborhood goes into foreclosure, it is not a good sign for the rest of the neighborhood. It tends to reduce the property values in that neighborhood. And obviously we don't want to have people who are still employed and can maintain a mortgage. We don't want them losing their homes because of some unexpected occurrence. So we tried to find ways in which we can incentivize the lenders to renegotiate the mortgages and to allow people to stay in their homes. I think this is very important. To your point about specifically to Brevard, I think we had discussed this, that 2/3 of the foreclosures are investor-owned properties or properties that people bought, you know, in the hope that they could generate money from them, either as rental properties or as resales. These properties are undoubtedly a blight on communities. They're causing difficulties in neighborhoods. They reduce the values in terms of anybody else who's trying to refinance or take advantage of opportunities to stay in their home. So they are a problem. Now, what this bill did, the stimulus bill, as we call it, did provide an opportunity for local communities. Specifically, Brevard County got $5 million that it can use to purchase these homes and rehabilitate them and allow them as low-income homes for people who would qualify for them under those conditions. So there's a hope that we can absorb some of them through a program that affordable housing is a very important issue in this country and particularly in this area. So we're working towards making it a win-win situation, or making lemonade out of the lemons.
Well, we're out of time. Suzanne, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today, and thank you for representing Brevard County. Well, that's our program. I'm Matt Reed. We'll see you here next Wednesday on WBCC or FloridaToday.com. Thanks for joining us.